Nobody came to my graduation, not a single familiar face in the crowd. When they called my name, the row labeled reserved for family stayed completely empty. The sunlight hit the metal seats, making them look even colder. I still posed for the photo, pretending it didn't hurt. 3 days later, my mom finally texted me, not to congratulate me, not to ask how the day went, just, "Need two $100 for your sister's sweet 16. No greeting, no emotion, nothing." So I sent $1 with a congrats, then changed my locks. For the first time, my apartment was quiet, though I knew that wouldn't last. My graduation day was supposed to be the moment I finally felt noticed. The whole stadium glittered in the May sun, a sea of navy gowns and excited families holding up their phones. When they announced Camilla Elaine Reed, Master of Data Analytics, I automatically looked toward the front rows, hoping to see someone, anyone, from my family. The section reserved for families stared back at me, completely empty, the metal seats shining under the light. Not even a hint of where my parents should have been. I pushed out a smile for the photographer, clutching my diploma a bit too tightly, my face straining from pretending everything was fine. Around me, joy filled the air. Students hugged their parents. Some cried into flower bouquets. I stood off to the side, next to a family I didn't know, while they took pictures. My smile kept fading with each click of their camera. After the ceremony, I wandered around the courtyard, scrolling through my phone so I wouldn't look alone. That's when Ruby, one of my classmates, spotted me and squealed, "You did it!" Her parents took photos of us, both of us grinning. Then she looked around and asked, "Where's your family? Are they just running late?" I lied without thinking. It slipped out easily. Years of experience. By the time I made it to the parking lot, the sky had turned a soft gold. Balloons bobbed above cars, kids were shouting, horns were honking. I sat in my beat-up Civic and watched everything through the windshield. For a moment, I imagined my family walking toward me, Mom smiling, Avery in her glittery sneakers, Dad holding a bouquet. Then the noise of engines starting broke the fantasy. Honestly, I shouldn't have been surprised. They skipped my college graduation too. Back then, Mom said Avery had finals. Dad didn't even bother to call. There was always some excuse. There was always something more important, more urgent, more shiny than me. I had spent my entire teenage life trying to earn love the way other people try to earn scholarships, working nonstop, taking every shift, sending money home, agreeing to every favor. When I was 16, I was wearing that brown Starbucks apron before sunrise, handing caramel macchiatos to nurses and lawyers on their morning rush. Mom would text me things like, "Thanks, honey. Avery needs piano lessons." Or, "She has a field trip. Just a little extra." And every time I said okay. The first time she said, "You're our pride," I soaked it in. I really believed it. I thought that's what love sounded like. Gratitude. Now I understand it was something else entirely. It was obligation dressed up as affection. When I got accepted into grad school, I convinced myself that this degree would finally shift things. That if I accomplished enough, if I hit every milestone, maybe Mom would see me as more than a backup plan. More than a reliable source of income wrapped in a daughter's title. Maybe she would finally see me as her equal. I had no idea that even success could be twisted into another opportunity to take from me. 3 days after the ceremony, while my cap and gown still hung by the door, the message came through. "Need $1,200 for your sister's sweet 16. No, congratulations. No, how did it go?" Just numbers, and that same silent expectation I'd known my whole life. I stared at that text for what felt like forever. And something inside me, something I'd ignored for years because it was small, exhausted, and constantly pushed down, finally rose up. I kept staring until the screen dimmed and locked itself. The $2,100 sat there like an order, not a question. I should have been used to it by then. For years, money had taken the place of affection in my family. It was the only language they ever spoke. But that day, it didn't roll off me the way it always had. Maybe it was the emptiness after graduation, the echo of applause meant for everyone except me. Maybe I'd simply reached the point where I couldn't keep paying for a kind of love that had never been real. I opened my banking app and looked at my savings, barely $3,000, and felt something inside me go firm, almost cold. I entered $1, added a note that said "Congrats," and pressed send. For a long moment, I just stared at the screen, at the little word sent glowing back at me. Then I went to the drawer by the door, took out the spare key my mother insisted on keeping for emergencies, and tossed it straight into the trash. That night, I called a locksmith. He showed up about an hour later, an older man with a gentle voice and tools that clinked softly like wind chimes as he worked. When the new lock snapped into place, it felt steady and permanent. After he left, I stood in the doorway for a moment, breathing in the faint scent of metal and oil. It was the first real boundary I had ever put up in my life. The next morning, sunlight poured into my little apartment. I made myself a cup of coffee, watched the steam rise, and for the first time, the silence didn't make me tense. It belonged to me. No one could let themselves in. No one could demand anything. Peace actually had a sound, and it was this. At least, until the knocking began. The knocking was firm, steady, and wouldn't stop. I froze. It wasn't Mrs. Patel, my landlord. She always called before coming by. When I looked through the peephole, I saw two uniforms standing in the hallway. "Denver Police," one of them said, calm and professional. "Miss Reed?" I opened the door, my heart pounding. "Yes?" The taller officer, a black man who looked to be in his 30s, held up his badge. "We received a call from your mother. She reported that you've been acting erratically, changing your locks, not answering calls, and said she's worried you might harm yourself." For a moment, I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so unreal that it looped back around to heartbreaking. "She did that?" I asked quietly. His expression softened. "We just need to verify that you're okay. Would you mind if we come in?" I stepped aside and let them enter. The apartment was spotless. A coffee mug on the table, my laptop open with my project still on the screen, my diploma neatly framed on the wall. I motioned around the room. "Do I look unstable to you?" The corner of the officer's mouth lifted, almost a smile. "Not even a little, ma'am." He asked a few routine questions about work, stress, and family. I answered honestly. "Just finished grad school. Sending out job applications. No medical issues. I'm just setting boundaries." He nodded. "We'll mark the report as no concern. If your mother calls again, you can reference this visit." They headed toward the door, and just before leaving, he paused and said, "You know, sometimes when people finally start standing up for themselves, the folks around them panic. Happens more than you'd think." When the door shut behind them, I leaned against it, shaking, not from fear but from pure anger. My mother hadn't just crossed a line, she had bulldozed right through it. She hadn't set a boundary, she'd declared war on one. That night, I sat on my couch with the police report still fresh in my inbox. I replayed everything over the years, the manipulation, the guilt trips, the way she'd pressure me into sending money. Every time I hesitated, she'd say, "Family helps family," as if love meant obedience. It had never been about care. It had always been about control. I didn't know what she had done yet. All I knew was that if she was willing to involve the police just to embarrass me, then nothing was off limits anymore. The quiet in my apartment no longer felt calming. It felt like the stillness right before a storm, and I was tired of standing outside waiting to be hit. The next morning, I was awake before the sun came up. The city was muted and soft under the early light. My phone sat face down on the table beside the police report. I hadn't heard a single word from my mother since the night she sent officers to my door, but her silence didn't feel like a break. It felt like planning. I poured myself coffee and opened my laptop, ready to distract myself with job applications. But instead, almost without thinking, I opened my banking app. A heavy knot formed in my stomach. 2 new credit inquiries stared back at me: Capital One and Discover. Both recent. Both accounts I had never applied for. My chest tightened. I hadn't applied for any new credit cards. I clicked over to my full credit report, and that's when I saw it. 2 accounts had been opened under my name, my social security number, my information. But the address listed wasn't mine. It was my parents' house in Littleton. I went still. Both accounts already showed charges. The balances were climbing fast, thousands gone. I scrolled through the transactions: Cherry Creek Events, Denver DJ Agency, Glam Studio. And suddenly, my mother's text slammed back into my memory, sharp and loud. Need $200 for your sister's Sweet 16. It hadn't been a request. It had been preparation. I dialed the customer service number on the statement, my voice shaky but controlled. This is Camilla Reed. I need to report identity theft. The woman on the other end confirmed my info, hesitated, and then said, "This account was opened in person at our Littleton branch last month. Co-applicant, Linda M. Reed." For a moment, everything around me stopped. The refrigerator hum, the ticking clock, even my breathing. "Ma'am," she continued gently, "we'll mark this for a fraud investigation. You'll receive the forms within 24 hours. When the call ended, I just stared at the screen. It was all there in black and white. My mother's signature, her phone number, her address. She hadn't just used me for money. She had pretended to be me to get it. I opened my voice recorder. Colorado's one-party consent law meant I could legally record our next conversation. Then I dialed her number. She answered after 3 rings, her voice sharp. "So, you're alive." "Mom," I said calmly, "I found 2 credit cards opened under my name, both using your address. Do you want to explain that?" She let out a practiced, hollow laugh. "Oh, that. I was helping you build credit. You should be grateful, especially since we're using it for Avery's Sweet 16. Stop being dramatic. It's family money. What's yours is ours." "No," I said quietly but firmly. "What's mine is mine. And what's yours is under investigation." The silence that followed was immediate, heavy and stunned. Then I heard her sharp inhale. "You wouldn't dare." I already did. I ended the call, saved the recording, and titled it Boundaries, May 17th, 2025. Outside, the morning light stretched across my floor, glinting off the edge of my diploma and the new lock on my door. 2 reminders that everything in my life had been earned by me, and that now I was finally protecting it. For the first time, the quiet in my apartment didn't feel tense or uncertain. It didn't feel like the moment before a storm. It was the storm. And I was finally the one holding the thunder. I met them at a diner in Highlands Ranch, neutral territory, exactly halfway between their house and the life I was building. The place had cracked leather booths and coffee that never tasted fresh, but it was perfect. Public, controlled, and too open for anyone to raise their voice. They showed up 15 minutes late. My mother walked in first, wearing a floral dress and oversized sunglasses like they were armor. My father followed, looking smaller than I remembered. Avery trailed behind them, eyes glued to her phone, thumbs tapping nonstop. The golden child didn't even glance up. Camilla, my mother said sharply as she slid into the booth across from me. You really made us drive all the way here for dinner? We're not eating, I said. Even I was surprised by how steady, how cold my voice sounded. We're talking. The waitress came by, filled our cups with coffee, and stepped away. I pushed a brown folder across the table toward them. 2 credit cards were opened under my name, I said. Capital One and Discover. Both linked to your address. Both used for Avery's Sweet 16. My mother's smile barely twitched. Oh, that, honey? I did it for you. You need credit history. I was helping. Helping? I said quietly. You forged my signature. She flicked her hand like she was brushing lint off her sleeve. Don't turn this into a scene. It's family. You've always been so ungrateful. Do you think the world doesn't know who paid for your education? I laughed, sharp, loud, a sound that made people in nearby booths look up. You mean me? I said. I paid for it with every paycheck, every double shift, every loan you told me to take out while you used my college fund to buy Avery's prom dress. Avery groaned. Here we go again. I turned to her. That silver dress you wore to your party? You danced all night in something purchased on a credit card opened in my name, so enjoy the spotlight. Her eyes flicked away. Mom said you agreed. My mother cut in, her voice slicing clean through the air. Enough. You don't talk to your sister like that. I didn't steal from you, Camilla. I borrowed. For the family. You used my identity, I said, my voice lower now, steadier. And you called the police on me because I changed my own locks. You tried to frame me as unstable to keep control. I leaned forward. That ends today. For the first time, my father spoke, his voice thin and defeated. Sweetheart, your mother just got carried away. Let's not turn this into something bigger. We can sort this out quietly. I slid the folder toward him. There's no fixing this quietly. The bank already knows. There's an active investigation. Mom's head jerked up, and the color drained from her face. You did what? She whispered. I reported the fraud, I said calmly. The accounts are already frozen. The bank has your signature, your phone number, your address. Everything. They'll be contacting you soon. The silence that followed felt heavy enough to press on my chest. Even the usual noise of the diner seemed to fade, as if the whole room had paused to listen. You'll regret this, she hissed. You're tearing this family apart over a simple misunderstanding. No, Mom, I replied as I stood. You tore it apart the moment you decided my name was more useful to you than my love. I placed the money for my coffee on the table and walked out before she could say another word. Outside, the air carried the smell of rain. I sat in my car for a long moment, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My hands were trembling, but inside my chest there was a strange lightness, an emptiness that felt like it could finally make room for peace. That night, Cherry Creek shimmered in shades of purple and silver. It was Avery's Sweet 16, the big celebration. I wasn't invited, but I didn't need an invitation. I already knew exactly how it would all end. At 8:45 p.m., my phone rang. The number wasn't saved, but I picked up anyway. Miss Reed, a crisp female voice said. This is Lauren Stein, legal representative for Capital One in Colorado. I'm calling to let you know the bank has officially escalated your fraud report. Our internal team is working with local law enforcement to verify the transactions happening tonight at Cherry Creek events. You're not required to go there, but we wanted to keep you informed. My throat tightened. You're sending police to the venue? Yes, ma'am, it's standard procedure. We'll be documenting and confirming the charges. I thanked her, ended the call, and leaned back in my seat. Through my open window, faint music drifted in from downtown. Someone's celebration was about to fall apart. About 40 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. A text from Avery. Are you insane? The police just showed up. The DJ stopped everything, everyone's staring. Mom's losing it. Another message followed almost instantly. They said her name. The bank guy said your name. What did you do? I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Across town, 2 officers walked into the glowing banquet hall. No flashing lights, no shouting, just steady authority cutting through the neon atmosphere. A representative from the bank walked behind them, carrying a folder stuffed with receipts and contracts. "Good evening," one of the officers said, his voice steady. "We're here to confirm a report of credit card fraud connected to this event. The charges were made using an account under the name Camilla Reed." A wave of whispers moved through the crowd as phones lifted to record. My mother stood frozen beside the cake table, the color draining from her face. "There has to be some mistake," she stammered, her voice shaking. The banker opened the folder and began reading. "Primary applicant, Linda M. Reed, co-signer, unauthorized." The transaction records show clear misuse of someone else's identity. A wave of gasps moved across the room. Someone near the punch table whispered, "Isn't that her daughter's name?" My mother's mouth fell open, but nothing came out. Avery stood frozen in the middle of the dance floor, her eyes filling with tears as she whispered, "Mom, what did you do?" The officer kept his voice steady and professional. "We're not taking anyone into custody tonight. This is strictly documentation for the bank's investigation, but we will need copies of the receipts and verification of the IDs used." Silence settled over the hall. The only sound was the soft snapping of cameras as guests tried to record without being obvious, half bold about it, half pretending to look away. Within minutes, the DJ shut down his equipment. The banner that said Avery's Sweet 16, Born to Shine, sagged under the heavy, humid air, its sparkle fading. The room began to empty in small groups, whispers following every departing step. By the time my mother walked outside, the rain had started, steady, gentle, and unending. Back in my apartment, I stood by the window and watched lightning roll across the sky. I didn't smile. I didn't feel triumphant. I just let the quiet settle into the room, a quiet that felt final and undeniable. It was the sound of justice, soft but complete. For years, I had believed silence meant weakness. That night, I understood it could be victory too. 3 days later, the storm had passed, but the consequences remained. An email landed in my inbox from Capital One, fraud investigation resolved. Primary applicant Linda M. Reed has acknowledged unauthorized use and agreed to repay $8 for $12 in full. Just one sentence, but it said everything. There was no apology, no excuses, just the truth, finally written down where it couldn't be twisted. News spread quickly. In a suburb like Littleton, gossip outruns justice every time. People murmured in church hallways and over produce bins at the grocery store. "Did you hear about the Reeds? Something with a bank. And the Sweet 16. Avery's party clip. 30 seconds of confusion, flashing lights, and my mother's shock. Hit 500,000 views before she shut down every account she had. My father got quietly reprimanded at work for having their mail and financial documents sent to his office address. For once, I didn't feel responsible for fixing any of it. I ignored every message they sent. Not from resentment, from pure exhaustion. I was done justifying boundaries that should have been simple. I filed the FTC paperwork, froze my credit, and closed every account my mother had ever touched. Then I printed the final confirmation letter and pinned it on my wall beside my diploma and the locksmith's receipt. 3 papers in a neat row. Proof of effort. Proof of protection. Proof of freedom. That night, I made tea, pushed my window open, and let Denver's night breeze drift inside. The city buzzed below, alive, indifferent, steady. For the first time, the quiet didn't ache. It healed. 6 months later, autumn settled over Denver, leaves turning gold and piling along the streets. The air felt crisp, clean, almost forgiving. I had started a new position at Nova Data Labs, surrounded by people who valued what I built, not what they could take. On my wall hung three things: my diploma, my new employee badge, and the old lock I once replaced. Together, they told a single story: the moment I finally chose myself. If you've ever had to set a boundary just to breathe again, you're not alone. Tell me where you're watching from, so I know how many of us have finally changed the locks.